Welcome to our Rotherham SENDIAS video on what to do if you feel your child's special educational needs or disabilities are not being met. This is for children without an EHC plan. Before taking a look at this video, it would also be useful for you to consider our videos on SEND support in mainstream schools and our frequently asked questions video on SEND support. First of all, you need to remember that for a child to have special educational needs or disabilities, they must have at least one of the following: a learning difficulty or a disability. A learning difficulty is if your child or young person has significantly greater difficulty in learning compared to the majority of others of the same age. A disability is a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial, which means more than minor or trivial, and a long-term, which means lasting more than 1 year or likely to last more than 1 year, long-term adverse effect on their ability to carry out day-to-day activities. And this disability makes it difficult for them to use facilities normally provided for others of the same age in mainstream schools or colleges. And that learning difficulty or disability requires special educational provision to be put in place for them. Special educational provision is any educational or training provision that's additional to or different from that generally provided to others of their same age. So here's some signs that your child might be finding school or learning a challenge. Your child may not always share a lot of detail about their school day. As such, you may struggle to get an understanding of how they're finding it. So some signs to consider might include things such as chatting about friendships. Do they mention other children in a positive or in a negative way? Are they flitting from one group to another more regularly than you'd expect? Do they get invites to friends' houses, or do they want to invite friends over to your house too? Do they get on with any work that has been set for them at home? Are they reading regularly with you, particularly if they're primary school age? And does it sound like they're making progress and becoming more fluent? Do they avoid homework, or has this become a real battle at home? Does it take forever to get homework completed? Do they often grumble of feeling unwell on school days? Does this seem to go away during school holidays or weekends? Does their eating or sleeping pattern change during a school week compared to a weekend or school holiday? Are they willing to attend school each day, or has this become a challenge on a daily basis? Are you asked into school more often for things that have not gone well? Are parents' evenings leaving you with concerns, or are school reports worrying, or targets on SEND plans not being reached? It may be that there are other reasons for any of the above scenarios, but if you see any of these, you may wish to consider the next steps. So what do you do if you're feeling worried? First of all, talk to your child. Chat generally about school and ask open-ended questions so they feel they can offer any information that's important to them. Try not to use closed or leading questions, as this may give the impression that you're looking for a specific answer. So an example of a sentence that's open-ended is something such as, "Tell me about your day today." This gives an opportunity for your child to offer any information about any part of their day that they feel they want to chat about. An example of what I mean by a closed question is, "Have you had a good day today?" This really only provides a yes or no response. And an example of a leading question could be, "What have you found difficult today?" This gives the impression that something must have been difficult, and so this is the response that would satisfy you. Pick your moment to chat about school. For some children, talking about school the minute they get in the car or walk through the door is not going to be helpful, as they may need some time to process their day or regulate from the busyness of a school setting. As such, you may find it better to chat over tea, or chat just before bed or whilst watching TV or doing another activity such as playing a game or drawing. If your child mentions something they've found challenging, remember to stay calm and perhaps ask them, "How does that feel?" This will allow them to explore their own thoughts and feelings without them having to process yours first. At that stage, you might wish to also validate their feelings too. For example, "Oh, that must have been really hard," or "I'm sorry that happened. I can understand why that makes you feel sad or worried or angry." So the next step to take would be to consider what you're worried about and gather your own thoughts. This can be really important so you can feel prepared. You might feel that the situation needs to be monitored for a short while before you speak to anyone. For example, if it's a concern around friendships and social skills, you might wish to see if the situation changes over a period of time before feeling the need to discuss with anybody. It may be useful to consider any evidence that you might have to support your worries. For example, if this is a worry around learning levels and progress, do you have any documentation that would support this discussion, such as IEPs which may have the same targets on each time? You might also want to consider school policies too at this stage, such as their SEND policy, their behaviour policy, or their SEND information report. All of these should be on the school website and can be helpful with your next steps and discussions. Next, arrange a discussion with the school. The SEND Code of Practice says discussions should be led by a teacher with good knowledge and understanding of the pupil who's aware of their needs and attainment. This will usually be the class teacher or form tutor, supported by the SENCO. It should provide an opportunity for the parent to share their concerns and together with the teacher agree their aspirations for the pupil. As such, the first point of contact will be your class teachers or your form tutors. This is the person who knows them best in the school and has the responsibility for their learning. We always recommend making an appointment with them so there's an appropriate time allocated to the discussion. The discussion can take place in private, and the class teacher and yourself can spend the time focusing on the discussion rather than trying to fit this all in, for example, on a morning handover when the class teacher has the responsibility for his or her class too. It can be appropriate for the discussion to take place over the phone, via an online platform, or in person, whichever works best for both of you. So some things to discuss at your meeting. Share your worries and observations. Start by discussing your thoughts and what's led you to ask for the time to talk. You might want to ask questions such as, have they noticed the same things as you? Is your child making progress? You might wish to take use of the IEPs or school reports to show why you're concerned. How is school monitoring progress? Have the school identified your child as having special educational needs or a disability? Remember the definition of special educational needs and disability on the first slide, and if you feel they have SEND, then discuss this in detail with the class teacher. If they've been identified as having SEND, what provision's been identified for them? You might wish to ask for a copy of the documentation that records this. Is the SENCO aware of your child, and if so, what are their next steps? If not, can this be raised with them? Can there be a review or follow-up of your discussion in the next half term? It may be appropriate to arrange a date before leaving your discussion with the class teacher. It's really important at this stage to allow any actions to be implemented and give the class teacher the time to do so. However, if needed, at a later date, you might want to then arrange a time to discuss further concerns with the SENCO or a member of the SEND team. Before doing this, familiarise yourself with the school SEND policy so that you're clear on their processes for identifying and meeting children's special educational needs and disabilities. As before, you may wish to provide a summary of your concerns and observations, but include the discussions you've already had with the class teacher or form tutor and any actions that they agreed to take. Some questions you might want to ask are, is my child making progress? Are they able to share with you the data they use to show a child is making progress? Please be aware that they might need to send this to you the following days to ensure they have time to photocopy it for you. Does my child access any support that's additional or different from what the other children in the class have? Remember, this is special educational needs support. If support is in place, what support is offered and how often? For example, this might be small group work or some one-to-one, or it could be inside or outside of the classroom. Some adjustments on how the lessons are prepared and presented, for example. If there are specific programs of support in place, you might wish to ask what they're for. How will they know if progress has been made? How long will it be in place for? And what will happen once the programme comes to an end? If support's not in place, you might want to explore this further. Can this be addressed if progress is not being made in areas that have been identified? Have school considered asking for any of the agencies to help in assessing your child? Schools can access help and support from other services such as the Educational Psychology Service or Specialist Inclusion Service, for example. If the SENCO informs you that they haven't considered this yet, please feel able to ask them why this is the case so you can fully understand their decision making. If other services are involved, ask them who they are and how often they help. You can find out more about different services by looking on the Rotherham SEND Local Offer website. During your discussion, you may wonder, or it might be mentioned by the SENCO, how the school fund anything additional that's put in place to meet your child's needs or pay for additional services to come and help. Although funding is not normally a discussion I would suggest parents enter into with schools, you might find it helpful to know a bit about how SEN support is paid for in schools. As such, you might wish to take a look at our funding fact sheet on our website. This states that schools are expected to put in the first £6,000 worth of additional support from their own resources before they feel the need to request support from the local authority. You might wish to offer help at home to support your child too. Please ask if there are specific things that you can do to support, but be mindful the school may be really happy if you just support with normal homework, reading, spellings, etc., so your child doesn't feel overloaded with work. If a child is making use of SEN support or the graduated response, this should all be documented clearly and regularly reviewed and shared and discussed with you as a parent. Although there is no one set way of recording this, some of the more common documents are things such as an SEN support plan, individual education plans or IEPs, or Wave 1, 2 or 3 intervention plans or provision maps. However the school record the support, this should be shared with you and you should be part of the reviewing process. As such, you may wish to ask for a copy of the documentation. Next, it's about allowing the school the time to implement the SEN support or graduated approach. You might want to reconsider our video on SEN support in mainstream schools, which details this clearly. So if you feel you've exhausted all of the strategies that have been mentioned in this video, here's your next step if you feel your child's special educational needs or disabilities are still not being met. Consider the school's complaint process. You'll find their complaints policy on the school's website, or if not, ask their reception to put a copy in the post or email a copy out for you. Put your complaint in writing and ensure your complaint is dated, clearly marked as a formal complaint, and identifies clearly what your complaint is about. We suggest that your complaint is brief, so for example you could use bullet points to help to stay concise. We suggest it's factually accurate, and please avoid any inflammatory language or making the complaint personal. Provide dates or examples as evidence to support your complaint. Add details of how you would like your complaint resolving, for example the SEN support plan to be delivered in full without further delay. Add your contact details clearly and mark how you would like to be contacted, for example your email address. We always recommend you request a response in writing. You can find additional information about complaints on this link, www.gov.uk/complain-about-school/SEN complaints. A further option, once you've exhausted all others, could also be to complain to the DFE, and you can find their complaint form here. We hope you found this information helpful, but please take a look at the other information on SEN support in mainstream schools on our YouTube channel and on our website.